Hi friends, I hope everybody is doing okay. So usually on Shabbat, I don't close my cell phone. Because why? Because I forget to close it. So I know like there's dings and bleeps and bloops and whatever app you're on, I have a different sound for each one. And I know like relatively, the sound and the momentum of the whole story. But this Shabbat was off the chart. Bleep, bloop, bling, blang, whatever sound it has, off the chart. And I started to get nervous, like, is my building on fire? I'm out of town, like, maybe I should look into it. Whatever, I resisted the temptation. By around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my cell phone died out. There were enough hours for me to forget the whole story. By the time I recharged my phone, got back online, checked out my WhatsApp messages, and a dear friend of mine in Toronto said, Eliza, did you know that Jackie Mason passed away over Shabbat? I did not. And after the fact, I obviously looked at all the bleeps and bloops and whatever came my way to find out how many people were saying, Eliza, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I know you were great friends with him and how he inspired you, and on and on and on. And yes, it's a devastating loss to everybody who knew Jackie, to all his fans, to all his friends. And I was devastated, shocked. He died at 93 years old, and I'm still shocked. Because Jackie Mason is like a Princess Diana figure. You never thought that he would die. He's like the type, I used to walk down the streets with him, and they would say, oh my God, Jackie Mason. Are you Jackie Mason? He's like, yeah, I know, you thought I died already, right? You're shocked I'm still alive. He is something larger than life in Jackie Mason. Why I knew him, how I knew him, yet to come in this whole story. But it's a great loss. I'm friends with Jackie Mason for over 20 years, and good friends until around just a couple of years ago when, of course, the coronavirus put all relationships to a halt, especially somebody who's technologically not savvy like Jackie was. And I also left New York, so a little space gathered between us. But the friendship that I had with Jackie and the way I know Jackie is probably better than almost anybody in his life. And because I represented for Jackie two things in one package, something that he couldn't do himself but that he saw in me. And what were those two things? I was the Hollywood. I was a journalist. I was interviewing famous people. I was blonde. I was cute. I was younger. But I was things that Jackie liked, he admired, he was attracted to. But what was I also that he really valued most of all at his core? I was a religious Jew. I was a Rebbitzin. I was married to a rabbi. And I was a woman of value. I value meaning that I maintained integrity and decency and morality. And, you try. You see a cute girl with blonde hair, you try. But I was a religious girl, and he saw in me the depth of his background, of his rabbinic training. His father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, and a few generations, even more than that, were rabbis. And he used to tell me, well, somebody in our family had to make a living, that's why I went into show business. But in me he saw many things which he valued. And we had a friendship that outlasted many other of his friendships, because Jackie was a very friendly, amazing man. But he could have his moments of harshness. And if he could not tolerate deception, if he could not tolerate certain things that grated against him, he would cut you out sharp. He would. Not out of meanness, I think, with him, but out of self-preservation. Because I don't think that Jackie Mason had a mean bone in his body. Jackie Mason is one of the biggest influences in my whole life. There are a few others. I'm not going to get into my mother and the Torah and my father and all those things. Things that are external to, your immediate bubble. A few years ago, I wrote a book, and it's called The Words That Shaped Me. And I recommend that you don't read it, because I'm a different person than the person that wrote this book. And right now, if you really want to read anything that I wrote, I would say read my weekly articles on my Torah commentary. I think they will outlast all of the stories that are in this book, because it has a lot to do with the celebrities and this and that, and at the end of the day, it's all meaningless. The one sustaining value that lives forevermore is the Torah. So go to my blog. I don't remember what the whole long title is, because Blogspot or whatever it is, like, it forces you into a title you don't want. But go on my Facebook page. You can find my blog. In any case, so I wrote this book, and unfortunately and sadly, this year has been like really harsh for me, because my best friend, my editor who edited this book, he died in September. Jackie Mason died Saturday, and Larry King, who also endorsed this book, died this year. But Jackie Mason, what he wrote is, Aliza has the brains of Henry Kissinger and the body of Marilyn Monroe. This book is brilliant and hilarious, and I'm glad to say that I taught her everything she knows. I know he said it as a joke, but I don't think that he knows how true it is. I want to read you, there's a lot of reference to Jackie Mason in this book, but the part that is most relevant to me is the part that I want to read you. And I have so much to say about him. I hope you'll tune in. And at the end, I even have voice messages that I saved through the years that he left me on my cell phone. And people used to say, Aliza, your cell phone is full. I can't leave you a message. And I'm like, I know, but Jackie Mason left me messages and I can't delete them, like whatever. So today I went through those messages, and by mistake I deleted one, but there's 18 survivors, so that's good too. I will put them on at the end of this, and then a few pictures of me and Jackie Mason through the years. But I'd like to read you an excerpt from my book. Whew, it's hard to take a breath, because he meant a lot to me. He meant a lot to me. I don't know, God wants something for me this year. I know he does. And I'm working my way. You know, there's a song, I'm working my way back to you. I hate to make my reference to the days where I listened to that music, but I'm working my way back to you, God. I'm working my way back to you. So, in my book, page 252, and it's in the chapter of urbanicity, or in the word of urbanicity, because it's the words that shape me, so urbanicity. I've walked the streets of New York City in many shoes, and loved it at every bend. I've walked it as a single girl in stilettos. I've walked it as a rabbi's wife. I've walked it in the arm of famous people. I've walked it in running shoes, catering to the homeless, and sitting on the steps of the Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church with them. I've walked it as a journalist, doing man-on-the-street interviews. I've walked it as a protester at rallies. I've walked it, proud, and at times, and more often than not, lonely and disheartened. And with every step that hit the pavement, I've been enriched and watched myself grow and evolve in the reflection of the storefront windows. Yes, I have walked down many streets in Manhattan, but among the more entertaining experiences of doing so is doing so with comedian Jackie Mason. Sometimes it can take 45 minutes to travel down one short block. Every passing stranger with uncommon familiarity stops to say hello and get his autograph. Aren't you Jackie Mason? One fan asks. Mason quickly replies, I sure hope so, because I've been cashing his check every week. Then 4 seconds into the conversation, whether it be a Pakistani cab driver, a Jew from Borough Park, or a farmer from Arkansas, they start to imitate him. But he doesn't rush away. He engages people and analyzes them on the spot. Within 10 seconds, he can guess what a complete stranger does for a living, and whether he's a divorcee, a turkey, a patsy, an actor, or a fraud. He is right, 95% of the time. As he writes out an autograph, he'll say, "Hey, mister, you're looking to me a little bit like a homosexual." And they laugh, but they fess up. He is one person that I would never dare to lie to. He is literally a living, breathing lie detector on the go who can smell BS while it is still in fodder form. What I like most about Jackie Mason is that he doesn't hobnob with the upper crust who sit around impressing each other with their own vain shallowness. Mason's favorite hangouts are New York delis and diners, and it is there and in the very streets of the city that we both love so much that Mason finds food for his humor, studies human behavior, and explores the gridlock of colorful characters with whom he intersects. I think for many years it was through his eyes that I learned to understand New York. In the jungle, your instincts must prevail. And I also learned from him that if you ask a question with enough chutzpah, people will still answer. Jackie Mason was my big first interview in the big city. Several years ago, as editor-in-chief of Celebrate magazine, I tried incessantly to gain an interview with him. I wrote numerous letters to his agent, but to no avail. As usual, I wouldn't take no for an answer. One day, I found out that Mason was to make a brief appearance at a fundraiser on the Intrepid, the aircraft carrier museum on Manhattan's west side. I got myself in. I paid each security guard to beat me with their gate number when Mason arrived so that I shouldn't miss him. And when I got the beep, I dashed over in my 4-inch heels to greet him. And my audacity, well, it paid off. But when I went back to my office to transcribe the taped interview, all that could be heard was New York traffic and the initial 3 words, testing, 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 1, 2, 3. I called Mason, explained what had happened, and I asked if we could try it again. He immediately consented and said, "Your questions were so good, I didn't mind having an extra day to think about them again." And as for the final article, Mason said, it made him appear more interesting than he ever thought he was. Since then, we have been the very best of friends. But that doesn't even say an inch of what Jackie Mason was. We did walk down many streets of Manhattan together. And he was so cute because as famous as he was, he loved the adoration of his fans. His fans were everything for him. Jackie Mason gave up being a rabbi. All the dreams that his family invested in him, he gave it all up, just so he could be acknowledged for his humor and for who he himself was. So he used to say, "Come, let's take a walk." You know, he would just love to embrace, engage people. So we would walk down the streets of Manhattan and, turn right or left and say, no, this isn't a good street. I'm like, "Why not, Jackie? It's like Fifth Avenue. Why isn't it a good street?" And he was like, well, there's not enough people here. There's not enough people? Every celebrity that I ever interviewed was, they're dodging their fans, they don't want to be bothered. Jackie Mason, Fifth Avenue wasn't a good street because there were not enough people in that street. If he would see another street that maybe there were more passerbys and people who would say, "Hey, are you Jackie Mason?" that was the street to go down because he loved it. He loved it. And then people would stop, and it was funny when I was walking with him, people would say, "Oh, Jackie Mason, I saw you coming a mile away." And he says, "It takes a yutz like you to see me a mile away when I'm walking with a girl who looks like that." It's, some people, they're the persona, the camera goes off, and even me, I tend to be shy. I hate to talk. I do this against my own better well-being, whatever. But Jackie Mason was more Jackie Mason when the camera was off than when it was on. he would interrogate you. And really, honestly, like I said, you cannot lie, you could not lie to Jackie Mason. He would look at you, and while you're already forming your answer to the question he asked you, he knew already you're full of it. He knew it. I have interviewed congressmen, senators, prime ministers, brilliant people, heads of think tanks, and I could tell you that I have never interviewed or met anybody like Jackie Mason. He was the most brilliant person that I have ever met. I remember we walked the streets of New York. New York is like a smorgasbord of interviews. You walk down this block, you'll meet journalists. That block, you'll meet actors. You're always meeting somebody. They would meet him. They would engage him. It was some Democrat. I don't remember who it was. It was in my early days where I didn't care to remember the name. I was just excited I met somebody. And they were a politician. And they said something to him. A politician, brilliant, smart, smart. He shred them. I was embarrassed for the politician. He shred them because he was brilliant. Jackie Mason used to read for 5 hours a day, at least, every single headline, every newspaper, every article, every story. I have to tell you, when I first tried to get into Columbia, there's an entrance exam. And I thought I was brilliant enough because I tend to be a little bit of a smart person. And I thought I can get into Columbia without any rehearsal. I didn't get in. My initial effort. And then I spent a couple of years with Jackie Mason. And you cannot sit at his table. You cannot sit at his table without knowing things. And if you say things that are stupid, dumb, he will crucify you, all with a smile and with good intent. So I started reading the newspaper 5 hours a day. And when I sat down, I spoke, and he was proud of me. He says, this girl, you think she's blonde, you think she's this, you think she's that. She's at Rebbitzin, she's married to a rabbi, and she's brilliant. And whatever subject they brought up, I knew. Why? Because I was scared. I was actually scared not to know the answer. He was one of the few people in my life that scared me because of his brain, not because of his muscles. Muscles, I'm not so worried. Brains, wow, they can really disarm you. And he was not a fancy person. He wasn't. I remember the first time I wanted to interview Jackie. I set it up in a place that was super fancy because he's famous. What am I? I have to impress him. It's a famous place, a beautiful place. And I think I was living in Connecticut at the time, so I booked a room in the Regency Hotel. I don't know if it was the Regency. It was one of those famous hotels in New York where I know all the celebrities were. I booked a room because I didn't want to be late for the appointment. I told my husband to get from Connecticut to Manhattan. I might be late. I might be stressed. I might be nervous. I might forget all my questions. I'm booking a room, so we booked a room in the hotel. And at 11 o'clock, I'm sitting at the cafe, ready, tape recorder on, my notes. I'm brilliant. I'm prepared. I knew more about Jackie Mason than he ever knew about himself. And it's 11:15 and 11:30 and 12. I'm like, oh my God, I know I'm an idiot. Why would he want an interview with me? I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. And I was so stressed. So I called Jackie and said, hi Jackie, your office arranged an interview with me. I'm waiting at the hotel and you were supposed to be here at 11 o'clock. Oh, I'm so sorry, and this and that, a whole story, whatever, and we'll redo it. And he, he gave me his word and we redid it another time. I didn't tell him that, I just spent $200 for the hotel that night. But we rescheduled the interview. Of course, the rest is history. Okay, so we did the interview, and we really became best of friends. And ever since, every interaction that I've had in life, I have Jackie Mason in the back of my mind. How would he approach it? How would he ask it? How would he deal with it? He wouldn't let people get away with it. You give him a stupid answer, you'll be sorry. You'll be sorry you ever opened your mouth. And that's Jackie Mason, the famous person. And then there's the Jackie Mason, my friend, who opened up to me on so many subjects. About his father, about the hard time he had growing up. His father really took him to task. He suffered. The discipline in his family was hard on him. The expectations on him were hard on him. And all Jackie Mason ever wanted was to be accepted and to be loved. Every moment was a moment to gain recognition, to gain a laugh, to gain friendship, to gain something from you. We all thought Jackie Mason was giving so much, but we meant so much to him because he was also in the take the whole time. He was not somebody who fell in love with himself. Like, he had no memorabilia. He wouldn't collect articles, clippings, this, that. It's like, Jackie, I'm writing an article about you. I need I don't have it. What do you mean you don't have it? You've been famous for before I was born. I don't collect this stuff. I have a small closet. I hang 2 shirts. That's enough. Because all that memorabilia meant nothing to him. The moment, the now, what you were to him and what he was to you now was everything for Jackie Mason. He's an amazing man. His intellect, his humor, his friendship. He never told me no for anything. Very soon after he met me, I applied to journalism school in Columbia. Like I said, I reached out to him really before I was like anything or established. And I said, Jackie, I'm trying to get into Columbia Journalism School. I didn't get in the first time. You want to help me? He wrote me a letter. Did an interview with her. She was great, da-da-da. And I honestly think that he meant it because I spoke to him in a way that nobody else spoke to him before. I spoke to him. I didn't see the star in him. I saw the human in him, and he saw the humanity in me. And that friendship sustained us for a very long time because he cut people out in his life. Jackie, like the guillotine on your friendship if you just kind of sneezed the wrong way. He was quite a character when you watch his videos, how he makes fun of Jewish husbands, even though he had a marriage in title. But he was a lot like that. You go to a restaurant with him, and he was hysterical because wherever you put him wasn't the right place to sit. Oh, it's a little too air-conditioned, it's a little too light, it's too cold, there's too many people. By the time you actually settled at the right table, you had already probably went through 7 tables. And if I would be with anyone else, I'd be embarrassed and I'd run it. I would say, I don't know this person, I don't know. But Jackie Mason made it acceptable and hysterical. You think this table is for a man like me, it's too close to the air condition, too far from the window, and he went on, and he was great, and everybody loved him. And we'd walk down the street, and where you would snub your nose and walk away from a beggar and a homeless, he would give them money, and he would interrogate them too and ask them how they got to that point. Everybody was a human to him, and everybody was food for his comedy. He would write his comedic routines at the table with us, not in some big book that he took notes in a pencil. He would take a napkin. Hey, miss, you have a pen? Mister, you have a napkin? Well, that's funny. He tried it on 7 people in the restaurant. It worked. He threw it into his routine. I liked it that he told me, you have comedic timing, he told me. And it always was a great kick for me when I made him laugh. Seeing myself through his eyes, that also opened my eyes. I think that not just all of humanity has really experienced a great loss with the loss of Jackie Mason. He knew how to make people see themselves. He wasn't afraid, in today's times, you can't do today what Jackie Mason did. Today you have to be politically correct. You can't say this, you can't say that. I know I'm on Facebook, I say, I like Israel. Ooh, you're blocked for a year and a half. Okay, a little bit of hyperbole there, but, enough to make me feel the hyperbole. Jackie Mason couldn't do his comedy today because we're so politically correct, they would shut him down. But Jackie Mason saw people for who they were, for what they are, and they loved him for it. He made fun of Jews, and he made fun of Italians, and he made fun of Puerto Ricans, and he made fun of everybody, and they laughed because he made them see themselves. When I interviewed Jackie Mason, probably the 100th time I interviewed him, every time I wanted an interview, whether it was for school or for an article or for a TV or for whatever I wanted to do, he never told me no. When I wanted to get onto Fox News, I need a letter for Roger Ailes. Yes, yes, yes. Why? Because he had faith in me, because he knew I was smart. He wouldn't jeopardize his name just to be nice to me. He knew I was a smart girl. And he was never a jealous person. He, like Fagin, if you speak Yiddish or Jewish, he didn't begrudge you your own success. He didn't begrudge you. He's one of the few people that I ever met in New York that didn't like, oh, let's keep her down because, she really is good and maybe she'll be better than me, so I don't want to help her. He was not one of those. I will help her. Let her move on. And so he never told me no. And he cracked me up all the time. Like, I tried to be serious with him and I interview him. Like, when I interviewed Netanyahu, I was like, when's the last time you cried? And I think he brought up his brother who died in Entebbe. That was the last time you cried. He was like, seriously, great question. I got I got some liquid eyes from Netanyahu, the prime minister of the strongest army minus America in the world. I'm going to pull the same question on Jackie Mason. I said, Jackie, when's the last time you cried? He says, well, the last time I met you and you didn't take your clothes off. So, he always would throw you off. I know I'm religious now, so those jokes are not as appropriate to the new world I'm in, but that was Jackie Mason. That's who he was. I'm like, Jackie Mason, how do you want to be remembered? As somebody who's still living. And you know what? He's right. He will be remembered always as somebody who's still living. Because Jackie Mason's humor is not the type you heard the joke, okay, what's the next latest joke? It's you have to listen and listen to his jokes to find them funnier every time. As you grow wiser and deeper and more aware of how the world works and you listen to his jokes, they become funnier. They never run out of style, out of humor. Jackie Mason is somebody who was underappreciated in this world. I don't know if it was out of jealousy. I don't know if because of the politics of the New York Times or other newspapers who used to commentate on his performances. But Jackie Mason was a superstar that will never be equaled, surpassed, ever. Jackie Mason is a Kohen. He studied as a rabbi, and he died as a Jew, and he died as a Kohen. He didn't die Jackie Mason. He died Yaakov. His Hebrew name is Yaakov. And what's Yaakov? Yaakov is the superstar in our Torah. Yaakov is somebody who started as the heel, but he launched himself up. No matter how people tried to keep him down and all the challenges, they brought him up. Now, Jackie Mason used to tell me that he didn't believe in God because he said if you would have a business and, okay, no, he said it a little differently. And it was funny when he said it. But I would say, did you believe in God? And he would say, listen, if you would have a manager who runs a business the way God runs the world, he'd be fired in a minute. He didn't believe in God in what he told me, but honestly and truthfully, for somebody who spent so many hours in every cafe, because he didn't want to meet in the ritzy-glitzy places, he wanted to meet in the cafes, he wanted to meet in his laboratories where he could meet real people. He was a real person, he made us real, and he died as a Yaakov, as somebody who is like the heel. Yaakov is the Ekev, is the heel who launches you up. And he did launch people up. His humor, I know that when my father was dying of a brain tumor, I had Jackie Mason on the A-track at the time. And as my mother got sick with her stroke, I put Jackie Mason. And the deepest moments of despair in my life, I put Jackie Mason on the, whether it's the CD or on YouTube or wherever it is. Jackie Mason lifted us all up. And I really pray, because a good friend of mine and of us all has left this world, and I pray that all he did for humanity, because giving people the chance to laugh is really a gift, probably the greatest gift of all, and that should be his aliyah. That's the thing that should elevate his soul, the way he elevated all of our souls, because Rabbi Nachman teaches you cannot serve God in despair. You cannot serve God in sadness. What did Jackie Mason do? He delivered laughter to us. He laughter to us. He lifted our spirits. He helped us elevate ourselves so that we can serve God and life in joy. And I pray that all that joy that he brought to this world and all the laughter, because there was not one turn, whether there was 100 people to recognize him on one street or even 2, everybody knew what Jackie Mason did for them. They remembered that their mother loved them, their father loved them. Do you remember I was in the front row at your show in Broadway, in Atlantic City, in Vegas, wherever. He made them all feel like they count, and he elevated all of us. The purity of who Jackie Mason was in his eyes. And he was my friend. And I say shalom to you, Jackie Mason. And I can't begin to thank you enough for everything that you did for me and the person that you turned me into by your wit, your humor, and even accepting me when people thought I was a blonde with no brains or whatever it was. You were a friend, and you were a heart, and you were a soul. And may Hashem bless you and your soul forevermore. Goodbye, my friend. Goodbye, Jackie Mason.
Message saved. Next message.
Hello, hello, hello. Nice to talk to you, sweetheart. So, what's on your mind?
Next message.
Hello, hello, honey. Jackie Mason, how do you do? I was in town and out of town. I'm back in town. I'm glad to hear from you, and I'll be glad to see you. Let me know. Call me back.
Next message.
Hello, hello, hello. This is the same guy from yesterday. Call me back, please.
Message saved. Next message.
Hello, hello, honey. I'm happy to hear from you. I remember trying you a few times, but I never got to you. Anyway, I was out of the country most of the time. I'm back now, so please call me back. I'd love to see you, hear from you, talk to you, as to whatever you want. It's up to you. Let me know.